So in 1972, this building was moved from Old Jail Lane to its present location. And it was flaked. In other words, they moved it here in pieces and then reassembled it. And so when it was sitting here being fully assembled, one evening some local youngsters decided that they would make a great fire. They had a fully involved building fire on the westerly side of the building, and it had gone into the interior of the building, which basically is shown by the char on all of the boards that are in here. And it ultimately has made the second floor unusable for the moment, but it was a valiant effort by the all-volunteer department, and they ended up stretching a couple of hose lines and ultimately putting the fire out. After it was done, the town came and rebuilt portions of the building that you see here. All right, they ended up putting some of the stringers, the floor joists that were completely compromised, and left the ones that were marginally compromised. And basically they never did finish the flooring in the second floor where all of the jail cells for the ladies were housed. So we are unable to take and utilize that as part of our tour, but the part that is the most interesting is the upstairs second floor where the ladies were held on their ways to their trial to go to Boston.
Remember, there was not freedom of speech. There was no constitution, no civil rights, and no laws to protect you.
That's correct. Any trial was generally before a magistrate of some type or an elder of the church, elder of the community. We were basically under English common law, but they didn't pay much attention to that in terms of any law system. You just showed up and you were found guilty, and that was it.
Well, the magistrate had the ability to determine whether you were guilty or innocent, and unfortunately most of individuals were found guilty. And the punishment was, if he was in a good day, let's say you and I both committed the same crime, and the magistrate was in a good mood, he might give you 3 hours in the stocks. And he didn't like me, so he gave me 8 hours, and we did the same thing.
Let me ask you a question. I heard when they put people in the stocks that they occasionally, if they really didn't like you, they would nail your ear
That's correct.
which I understand.
What they would do is a person who was sentenced to the stocks usually was sentenced to hours in the stock, not days, not weeks, but an hour in the 2 hours, 8 hours. Well, when they were in the stocks, there was a habit of you're in the stocks like this, and you would hang your head down. And the reason you did that was for two reasons. One, you could not be recognized, hopefully, but people knew anyway. But the other one was so you could get hit in the head with a tomato and not in the face. So those were things. In order to prevent hanging their head so they wouldn't be recognized, some guy came up with the idea of piercing their ears by nailing them back to the boards of the stock. At that point, when your punishment was up and you were being set free, they would not hold the nails. Kind of a crude way of piercing your ears, but they would cut your ears to the nail and then slide your ears off, or they would just pull your ears off, and whatever damage happened to your ears was part of your punishment.
And also, when we come back to the church, particularly Massachusetts Bay Colony, as you said earlier, any violation of a law is both a violation of civil law and also religious law, because of theocracy. Even missing church in the earlier period, you could be placed in jail.
I find one interesting law that remember back then you could be accused of being a witch.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, the famous witch trials in Salem. Fortunately, I learned in Salem that most of the witches were not burned. That was a rare punishment. I think there's a documented burning of a witch in Salem, but only one. Most of the witches were hung.
That's correct.
But there was another punishment for witches, which I find interesting, was the dunking, the dunking stool, and where they would place you in a chair on the end of a long arm, and they would dunk a accused witch into the river or the bay or a body of water for some kind. Well, anyway, the dunking stool, if you were accused of being a witch and you came up and you were still breathing afterwards, I guess you were innocent. If you came up and you had drowned, oh well, you were a witch and we didn't have to deal with you anymore.
Downstairs.
Right, men were in the downstairs area here. The doors are gone. They were all burned off. But the downstairs is the holding cells for the general male population, which is not really great. But if you take a look there, and I'm pointing over to the hole in the wall, that's where they took and fed the inmates. They pushed the food through. If you look over the other side of the building, you'll find that there's a scuttle hole. And those scuttle holes are latrines, if you will. And so that's the kind of like the story of the old jail.
Whoa, I heard somebody call it. That was my little girl calling me. She called kind of lonesome. She said,